Sciences and the 37 other research institutions around the world. Now we have around 60 members around the world, and UNESCO is one of the members. We highly appreciate that. And we regard ANSO as one of our sub-funding system and one of the implementers for international cooperation. Next, please. So international cooperation and GOSC, that this slide, I want to say something about why we attach a great importance to GOSC. The fundamental logic is that we believe that through the global open science cloud and its international research activities, we can work with our international partners, especially in such a data-intensive era. We may establish more concrete and comprehensive cooperation mechanism to harness the full potential of cooperation. Next, please. This is the some of the basic information of Chinese academic sciences, international cooperation data or statistics in recent years. So from these three figures, we can see that China and Europe and US are the three major cooperation areas in science and technology around the world. So that's we believe that laid a solid foundation for our future international cooperation in many fields, of course, including the data and the cloud, GOSC. Next, please. And another important perspective from our side to support this program is that, for example, we have a CS Earth program, CS Earth for SDGs. It's a quite big program with the total funding around 200 million euros for 5 years. So it's a platform system of data sharing and in other ways data generating platform. So from this program, we believe that this in the future, this program could be one of the fundamental data providers or sharing bodies for the global open science cloud in the future. And with the shared vision of SDGs, we believe that experts and institutions from around the world may accept the vision of GOSC. And another example is relating to the reader data fusion and computing. I'm not going to the detail, but I think from these two examples, I believe that GOSC has a good foundation to future development. Next, please. And of course, this year is quite tough for everyone. So we share desktops when it's not possible to sit around desks. And CNIC and our colleagues from many research institutes and around the world have been actively participating in the online meetings. So this is a simple figure of CS scientists flocked to virtual meeting from January to August, and till November, the number has increased more than the previous months. So that means that data sharing or virtual meetings are so important in this special year and probably next year. We are having a good opportunity to sit together to discuss the future of GOSC. Next, please. This is as the chair has mentioned, our bureau as serving as the one of the funding agencies to the research institutes around of the Chinese academic sciences. We have been supporting CNIC on discussing or brainstorming the idea of GOSC since around 2 years ago. This is the 2019 COLATA conference held in Beijing. I was there, and I believe that the idea of GOSC was intensively discussed in that meeting, and the Bureau of International Cooperation would like to support more on holding this kind of conference, brainstorming meetings to discuss these ideas. We believe that's the major function of our seed money in the previous years for GOSC. Next, please. And also, besides the conferences, we are having a series of training programs with CODATA and with some other international organizations and our partners around the world. So I think from 2015 on, we are having a joint workshop with CODATA on training of data to the scholars and the students around the world. Most of them are from the developing countries. So we will continue to support these kind of workshops and training courses. And I think the dissemination of GOSC's ideas and outcomes may be more useful in this training or conference mechanisms. Next, please. So after the seed money, after Professor Li Jianhui and his team's hard work, last month, the Bureau of International Cooperation has approved a collaborative research project on GOSC under the framework of IPP, as I have mentioned before. This program is not that big, but it's a big step further to support GOSC. The program will be 3 plus 2 years. We can say it's 5 years consecutive supporting. So next year will be the first year, but our work has already started from several months ago. So I would like to say special thanks to Professor Jianhui and his team and all the colleagues who have been involved in GOSCs for the previous months. And I can guarantee you that for the next 3 to 5 years, the Chinese Academy of Sciences will continue to support Professor Li Jianhui's team and GOSC. Next, please. And besides the IPP, as I have mentioned, we are also coordinating other possible funding opportunities and resources in China. For example, the Ministry of Science and Technology and SFC of China, some local governments, not only Beijing Municipal Science and Technology Commission and the CAST. These are the key players in China's innovation system. So we are also coordinating the academy with our partners in China to further support or providing more fundings for GOSC. And I believe the discussions are quite positive in the recent weeks. And next month, we may have a more detailed discussion with NSFC about this GOSC. So next, please. So in summary, that I think the Chinese Academy of Sciences support for GOSC is now undergoing the second phase with our international partners, which is the roadmap making and appropriateness making stage. We have been, I think we have been going through the stage of providing seed money, and we are now having some collaborative research, and maybe a pilot international program is, a truly international program is formulating, and we really anticipating a high collaboration, which means we will have a real international mega science. We call it mega science, or maybe big science is better. Project, which may be similar to SKA or some other ongoing programs in the near future. So thank you again for being involved in GOSC. I've heard from Professor Li Jianhui that yesterday you had a good discussion about GOSC's vision and the general ideas. So I think if we all agreed, we can go many steps further to make GOSC a better one. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this very clear presentation, Professor Zhang Yan. Costas, I think the floor is yours. I think we heard the very interesting perspectives from the Chinese Academy of Science with the seeds which have been planted with the first project and openness to engage in a larger vision and more strategic approach to GOSC. So I think Costas will bring now the perspective of the European Commission, of the European Open Science Cloud priorities and experience in international collaboration. Costas, do you have slides to share?
No, I don't have slides. It was a short 10-minute presentation, so I will do it orally. Thank you very much, Tiziana, for the invitation to your workshop. So I will not focus on the European Commission international cooperation activities, but I will mention some of it maybe in passing, but I will focus on EOSC and the European Open Science Cloud in the context of a global effort towards a global commons of research resources. So I think you know about the European Commission. I'm not gonna describe what it is. Maybe most of you know what the European Open Science Cloud is, but just to say very briefly, it is a federation of resources. Most of the resources existing already. It is not like constructing an entirely new thing. It is motivated by a vision of a web of digital objects and services. When I say digital objects, I mean data sets, but also other digital objects like that are research outputs or used in research, including, for example, publications or software or algorithms or models or whatever else. it's a significant amount of effort that is being put into developing the European Open Science Cloud, which very often we are saying that actually European Open Science Commons would have been a better term, but now cloud is established, so we'll stay with that. Most of the resources federating the cloud are in member states of the European Union and of associated countries. So again, it is not resources that are owned by the EU. It is we help in the federation effort. The European Open Science Cloud in Europe is funded under our policy for open science. So in what sense? We believe, we know, and I think we all agree that science is transitioning to become more collaborative, more open, more digital, more data-driven. We wish to remain at the forefront of this transformation. The transformation is not an easy one. It includes very many challenges. For example, one major challenge is open access to scientific outputs, including publications, data, or software and models. We have taken recently major steps to that direction. I mean, we think we are leading in that sense. We know also our friends in the US, they have taken similar steps, and in several countries across the world the same. So open access is one component of this policy, one challenge. Making data fair, findable, accessible, reusable, interoperable is another major challenge. Including involving citizens in science and research. We consider this to be part of open science, because opening up science doesn't mean opening it up between scientists and between countries. It is also opening it up between science and society, so scientists, researchers, and citizens. And it's also opening up science between disciplines, which is far more difficult. So we are also looking at research productivity, reproducibility of research results, and of conclusions of scientific publications that are coming out of our program. So we have a large amount of objectives that we pursue under the open science policy, and to pursue them effectively, we need a kind of enabling infrastructures or enabling framework. And for example, and very importantly, we need to change the system by which researchers and research institutions are assessed. So what we call the rewards and incentive systems, or the research assessment system, to make the transition to a system that favors collaboration rather than rewarding mainly individuality, and that rewards quality and impact rather than where you publish, the high impact factors in journals, or how much you publish, the amount of publications you produce. So this will be this is something very important that we have been working on, and will be intensifying in the future. Another area that is an enabling factor is an infrastructure where you'll be able to locate the resources, and not just locate, but be able to decide very quickly if you can use them, if they are appropriate for reuse, and what are the terms for reuse in terms of licenses, for example. And this is what the European Open Science Cloud is. So the European Open Science Cloud comes as an integral part of our open science policy. It is the enabling technical infrastructure on which to go forwards towards a more openness in science, or more openness means higher quality, high impact, more productivity, and more innovation in science. So in the European Commission, we have the privilege to be a research funder and a policy maker at the same time. So what we make for policies, we can also, we have to also implement them in our programs, and vice versa. So as a research funder, we mainstream open science practices in our projects. So from the new framework program, research data management will be mandatory, and producing fair data, so findable, access, interoperable data, will be again mandatory for all research projects. Fair doesn't necessarily mean open. Very often it is, but it doesn't mean necessarily open. So this is very important for our discussion here, because of course, I mean, international cooperation is not having meetings only. These are also necessary, but it is to be able to work with data and knowledge and resources across the world. So because of course a scientist, if she needs a set of data, it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter in many cases where it's coming from, whether it is in China or it is in Australia or in Canada, United States, wherever, in Europe. So ideally, data sets should be fair globally. I'm not sure what the China policy is in that. I know that the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation in the US have very advanced policies in that respect. So this is one example in which we provide, already we do provide, and we'll make it a contractual obligation for all our beneficiaries from next year onwards to provide all their data in fair form, and according to the principle, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So if you want to close your data, you need to have a good reason to justify why you close the data. So we're mainstreaming, and this was just an example, but we're mainstreaming open science policies, including for data, across our programs. For EOSC, we are also have been investing a significant amount of money. In the last 3 years, we have invested 250 million euros in developing and prototyping the Open Science Cloud. We have lots of projects that work on this. I think this have been examined or can be examined in other sessions. And we intend to intensify the effort from next year on. So we intend to intensify it both structurally as well as quantitatively. So structurally, we will have the European Open Science Cloud in a new form from next year, in the form of a partnership between us, the Commission, our member states, and the research performing organizations. For that purpose, association has been set up, a legal entity, which will group the stakeholders. And I know there are already close to 200 applications to join as members or as observers this new association. So it would be a partnership between this association representing the stakeholders and ourselves and our member states. The association, one of the things it will do, it will produce the strategic research agenda for the development of the Open Science Cloud. There is a version already that has been produced, which went into consultation, public consultation during the summer. And I believe quite a few of the responses were not from Europe, because it was a public consultation open to anyone who would like to contribute. So there were responses mainly from the European Union and associated countries to the framework program, but also from other parts of the world. A few words about the international aspects, or I already mentioned it briefly. We believe science is global. I mean, it's not believing, it's a fact. So we need to enable cooperation in science and research. The principles on the basis of which we pursue our international activities are the principles of mutual interest, similar values in terms, let's say, of integrity, research integrity, and ethics. We need to establish with our partners that we pursue collaborative activities with a level playing field, so nobody has an unfair advantage, on the basis of reciprocity. These are the principles: mutual interest, same values, level playing field. There are cloud initiatives in many countries, including Australia, Canada, from the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Europe and so on, South Africa, and of course the United States. And certainly we need to work together, and they need to work together at both the governance as well as the technical level. Our common aim should be to promote to promote interoperability between the different components. On our side, again, as I said before, that a lot of data, European data, are fair, and they will be even more so in the near future. Our approaches and standards that we're developing for the cloud and the EOSC are also public. So have produced a significant number of policy papers that reflect the exact policies that we are taking on different aspects, that they can be found on the web. Hopefully they are fair, findable and accessible, in other words. So this is also a very practical reaching out of a collaborative hand to all our partners globally, and would like to see the same from other countries. In other words, involving Europe, involving the European Union, and making their own reports, the data, publications, all research outputs fair, findable, accessible, and if possible, open. We already collaborate with many initiatives in relation to data, including Go Data, Go Fair. A number of years ago, I was personally strongly involved in establishing the Research Data Alliance, together with NIST in the US and with the National Science Foundation, with the Office of Cyber Infrastructure, and as well as with our Australian colleagues. So this cooperation goes on, and we think is the right framework. For example, the RDA to develop interoperability solutions or technical standards. For example, there is already for some years now an RDA working group on fair maturity assessment, in which we have invested efforts, and our American colleagues as well that are present here, as well as many others. There's an RDA interest group on open research commons, which is also important in that respect. Therefore, in summary, we fully agree, and we have the corresponding policies. We need to establish global commons for science resources. This is the desired endpoint by all of us, and we need to engage in very concrete actions of openness and cooperation on the basis of reciprocity and solidarity in research. Thank you, Tiziana.
Thank you, Kostas. Thank you very much. And actually, also, I apologize because you're a friend and I forgot to introduce you, but I should do now for those who don't know you. So Kostas is head of unit for open science at the European Commission, of course, and is fully involved in the European Open Science Cloud funding program, and in the past RDA and digital infrastructures. So thanks, Kostas. I think you brought up quite interesting points, a sign of strong commitment of the Commission, and I think a call for reciprocity and openness. I think we will have an opportunity to discuss this after the last presentation. So let me introduce now the third and last speaker, Manish Parashar from NSF. Manish is currently serving as Assistant Director for Strategic Computing at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Manish is leading strategic planning for the nation's future advanced computing ecosystem. And he's also an IPA to the United States Nation Science Foundation, NSF, since February 2018, where he's the Director of the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. So I think Manish is the perfect speaker for this session, bringing the point of view of the United States. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tiziana, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. I really enjoyed the previous two presentations, so thank you very much. So I wear several hats, and I would like to emphasize that this presentation is in my role as Office Director for the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure within the Directorate of Computer Information Sciences at the National Science Foundation. As you can see on this slide, NSF, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary. It has a very broad mission. It's to promote the progress of science, advance national health, prosperity, and welfare, and secure the national defense. And the way we do this is by supporting foundational, applied, and translational research across all of science and engineering, research, and education. And could you go to the next slide, please? So just to give you a feeling for the breadth of areas that NSF covers, here's a quick snapshot. We are organized as different directorates and offices, and these span areas such as biological sciences, engineering, mathematical and physical sciences, computer and information science and engineering, where the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure sits, geosciences, education and human resources, social, behavioral, and economic sciences, integrative activities, and of course, international science and partnership. Right. So it has a very broad community that it supports, and it's very heterogeneous in the type of research, in the type of researchers, in the type of data and methods and approaches that are used. The mechanisms that NSF has include supporting grants and fundamental research and education and training grants, community grants. It also funds a lot of research resources, and these range from large instruments and shared experimental facilities, telescopes, observatories, and the like. Also, cyber infrastructure is a big part of it, and this includes large computing leadership class computing resources, to campus resources, capacity resources, cloud infrastructure, test beds, edge resources, networking, data and computing services. So it's really a broad spectrum of infrastructure, both in size, scale, and capabilities that support this research, right? And so our approach really that we have both in our policies and our mechanisms are targeted to the specific needs of this broad community across these many different disciplines, as well as the integration in transdisciplinary practices, right? NSF is also complementing the other sister agencies within the U.S. research ecosystem, right? And so having unique and different needs, for example, in the ownership of IP, in the ownership of data, a lot of the solutions that it has is targeted to the unique nature of the NSF mission and of its community that it supports. Next slide. So open science, openness is really fundamental to NSF's mission. It is integral to its mission. It is really something that's built in. All research that's supported by NSF is open. Right here is a quote that I have here from a recent Dear Colleague letter focused on open science for research data, and it really highlights some of the points that were made in the previous presentation as well, that open science fuels scientific discovery, economic gain by making the products of federally funded research more easily accessible and usable. Right? Open science can improve scientific rigor by directly linking the products of research, both data and software, to the associated publication, making it easier for others to confirm the validity of scientific results reported in a journal or jury conference, right? Again, it's just emphasizing the points that were just made, right? So again, open science is fundamental to NSF's mission. We emphasize the science in open science, and that's an important thing. Collaboration, right, with reciprocity, with a level playing field, with shared values and visions is also integral to NSF's mission, right? And the way we address this is by taking a long-term view and philosophy towards it, right? Yes, we need to create first the incentive mechanisms, the policy infrastructure, the cyber infrastructure that's needed to be able to have the grassroots change, to have the culture change that's needed to really have a culture of openness, right? So we have this longer term vision, and keeping in mind the heterogeneous nature of our community, we've been trying to set up the right policy frameworks, right? And here are some on this slide. For example, the NSF data sharing policy, the data management plan requirements, right? That's needed to be able to bring about this culture change at the institution level, at the principal investigator or the researcher level, to build the culture of sharing, right? And the overall NSF Public Access Initiative aims to accelerate this to really advance the frontiers of knowledge. We also have an infrastructure, right, which is again includes repositories, includes individual PIs with their data sets, includes large computing facilities and networking and software. And the idea is to ensure interoperability across these different pieces so that we can create an infrastructure, cyber infrastructure, that really facilitates sharing. And finally, we have the community building efforts that really allow the community to come together around this principle of open science and sharing, right? For example, NSF has the NSF PAR, the Public Access Repository, which allows researchers to share publications, right? We require researchers to think about data management as a fundamental aspect of any research they propose, right? And where the concept of sharing is very, very important, right? And so, given the unique nature of NSF's research community, the nature of its awards and its policy, right? We try to build a framework for sharing around it. Next slide, please. So here I wanted to quickly walk through some examples to give you an idea of the impact that this is happening, right? So many of you might have heard about the COVID-19 HPC consortium, right? Given this idea of interoperability and sharing as a fundamental concept or requirement in our investment, when we realized that it was necessary to bring researchers and resources together to come together to address the pandemic that was affecting all of us, or is affecting all of us, right? We very quickly came together across not only the NSF community, but across agencies across the US government, and with industry and with academia, to be able to create a consortium for resource sharing, right? And this literally happened in days, right? So all the community were able to bring and combine resources and make them accessible to the research community in an open way to be able to collectively address this pandemic, right? And because sharing and interoperability and collaboration was integral to the way our resources were built and operated, bringing them together was very simple. For example, we were able to set up this sharing mechanism on top of our Exceed platform in about a couple of days, right? And so this was sort of a testament that this is very integral to what we do. We have been increasingly investing in what we call the missing middle, right? We have been funding a lot of different disciplinary, transdisciplinary resources, repositories, data set researchers, and we realize that science happens when they all come together, right? To address the important problems of our day. And so how do we make sure that we can access this data across these different ecosystem, discover the data and use the data in an effective way as part of end-to-end workflows? And so we have been really focusing a lot on building out this missing middle that brings these different pieces together to serve the need of science. And then finally, engaging the community around this shared infrastructure and shared vision is very important. And we have been fostering events, research community efforts such as RDA and CoData. We've also been working with other US agencies to align policies. For example, there's a subcommittee, the National Science and Technology Council has a subcommittee on open science, and NSF holds a leadership role in that to be able to bring all these communities and to be able to work across the unique policies and approaches in the different agencies, but still enable this broader vision of open science and sharing. I'm going to stop here, and we'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Manish. Thanks a lot. I like to invite all the members of the panel, Manish, Kostas, and Professor Zhang, to turn on the video if you can, as we will have a chance for a few questions. It seems to me that the presentations have a common theme in a way. So the policymakers, the funding agencies are confirming that there is a strong support of policies towards open science. I like, however, to perhaps look at the last example that was shown by Manish, the opening of data and infrastructure to tackle a global challenge, which is the current pandemic that we're facing. Europe did similar things and pulled all the efforts in bringing together the data. And it was recently reported, for example, that the biggest user communities of this, the data portal for COVID, are non-European. So what I'm missing in your representations, and I'm being intendedly provoking here, is still the missing bridge that connects the initiatives in different continents and countries that brings our efforts together in a more coordinated and aligned manner. So if I could paint a vision, if we could have pulled together data and infrastructures for data exploitation globally, maybe we could have even reached more and served the best our scientific communities. So what is the missing bridge, the building block that we need to construct to move ahead from policy to implementation? Manish, and then I will pass the word to Kostas and Professor Dang.
So thank you for highlighting the COVID-19 HPC consortium. So this is really interesting, right? We started it with a few, with a handful of industry, government agencies in the US and academic partners, right? And it has grown, right? It has grown not only across industry in the US, but internationally. The UK, Sweden, Switzerland, Australia, Japan, South Korea joined it, right? And it was able to do this in a matter of weeks and months in a very agile way, right? So the message here is that A, there is value in doing that. We realize this from that. B, it's possible when the right incentives are there, right? In this case, it was a shared desire to fundamentally address this pandemic that we were all facing. So when there is a shared desire, a shared need, we can come together. So now what we're looking at is, okay, what worked? How did this happen? Why was it so effective? And how do we bring those things and make this as part of our operations, right? How do we understand what were the incentives that brought me? What were the concerns? What were the issues that we experienced? And how do we make sure that we can do this not only for another crisis situation, but more towards enabling science in the future, right? So that's really, we're doing this retrospective analysis and finding out really what enabled this, and what in terms of policies, in terms of governance structures, in terms of mechanisms to be able to do this, and how do we then extrapolate from here and be able to do this more effectively in the future, right? So I think this was a great experience.
So what was the enabler for this success from your point of view?
I think it was this desire, the collective desire to be able to address this, right? The fact that there was a shared issue, that challenge that people were addressing, and the recognition that we are more effective collectively in addressing this than individually, right? And so that's really what caused different players to come in and say, we want to be part of this, and we want to be able to. So one of the requirements of joining the consortium and using its resources was that your research is pre-competitive research is open, right? You share the results that come out of that. And so with that basis, so people were able, because they found the value in doing that, right? So I think that's really what we have to capture. And so what we've learned is that this is possible once you have the right incentive mechanisms, right? And of course, there are governance and policy structures that have to be worked out, but we have some good insights into that at this point.
Thank you. This is inspiring. Kostas, what is your point of view on what is the first priority to make these collaborations structurally part of our way of operating? Kostas, I think you are muted.
Yes, sorry. I think that researchers and scientists naturally work together. So a motivation is very good, but even in the absence of motivation, if there are no obstacles, in the absence of obstacles, they will tend to work together simply because people want to work with the best in their field. So they will see who are the best and they will try to access them as people, as scientific production, their data, whatever. If you have common objectives, is much better, of course, because then you have an additional top-down, if you want, motivation, and we have seen how the world has gotten together. I mean, the scientific world has gotten together on climate change, for instance, or in other areas, motivated by common long-term objectives. Open science can be, or part of open science can be, I think, certainly such an objective. You said earlier, what are the missing bridges in moving from policy to implementation? I think today it is not that we have the policy straight, but we are missing the implementation. There is a lot of implementation going on, and there is a lot of policy still to be done. As I was saying in my intervention, collaboration will be efficient and productive if you have collinear policies. If, for example, the openness of data is there for everybody, more or less according to the same rules. And same thing about the fairness of data. So these are policies. These are things that an organization can impose on its staff, whether open access, for instance, a research organization or a university or a funding agency can impose. So it's not only encouraging. Yeah. So we have, this is the step. I mean, we have been experimenting with some of this in the EU, and in the US, I know it's the same case, since 2005 or so. So now we think it's, I mean, we're taking the next steps in terms of policy and really, going for it in a way that does not leave any doubts to anybody on what the desired outcome is. So first, therefore, we need everybody to take a position on these policies. So to implement these policies. And then the second thing that it is on the technical aspects, what is missing to a large extent, and it has started already for a long time, but we need much more work, is the data interoperability. And this is both at the high architectural level, as well as the more painstaking agreements on metadata formats and standards and vocabularies and catalogs and so on for each area or each sub-area that also need to be taken at the global level, or at least at an international level, because of course, I mean, we cannot have different metadata formats agreed in Europe and different ones in the US or in China. Then it's too late to turn the for the train to make a round turn. But this is ongoing already. It's ongoing, not as much as we would like to. It's still in relatively early days because the effort that will be needed is monumental. So this is for me a second important priority. Resources will stay national or European. So it will be, some of them can become purely global. But I don't expect this to be the most common case. but the resources have to be interoperable. So last thing to mention, because I like very much, first of all, we at Manish mentioned about culture, and that we need a change of culture. Yes, absolutely, this is the most important thing. And regarding COVID-19 and data, they had a symmetric effort in Europe with PRAISE, as the EXCEED, I guess, consortium who had in the US. We had, I mean, we saw that with the motivation of the pandemic, things moved very quickly, including for the RDA. I was not involved in the effort, but I know that within a record time of a month and a half or something like this, they produced a recommendation for COVID-19 data that would have taken years to produce otherwise. We have launched in Europe a data platform that it is a very good example of global platform. It is hosted by the EMBL, the Molecular Biology Laboratory, EBI in Cambridge, and with the Elixir consortium. This is European, but it is really open internationally. There are many depositors of sequences that are in China, in the US, and many other countries. And actually, most users, the majority of users of these platforms, are outside Europe. The majority. So we have funded, we have brought together a platform to fight COVID-19 that brings together genomic, molecular, epidemiological, and now clinical data are starting also to be deposited. Or to be accessible to the platform rather than deposited, and this is used actually globally. I think this is another very good example. The fact that they have a mirror agreement with NCBI in the US is also very helpful. Obviously, I mean, not only for COVID-19, but this is by default. So any data uploaded in the US, any genomic sequences, you can see them also in Europe, and anything uploaded in Europe, you can see them in the US as well. So that's an extremely good example also of global cooperation on concrete things, and used by a very large amount of researchers. I think there are 70,000 individual researchers that use the platform today.
Yes, I think there is, let's say, with this year, a sign that international collaboration is possible. I like to mention even the role of research communities. For example, in energy physics, there was a decision to devote a part of the infrastructure and pool it with the United States with Open Science Grid to support molecular docking simulations across US and Europe. So this is a sign of how even research communities across domains can work together. However, like just to bring a comment to this panel, I had the impression, and here I'm bringing my personal experience, that this is more exception under the pressure of emergency than practice. So Kostas, I think you brought the message that there is still policy work to be done. This is clear, you made it very clear. I'd like to ask Professor Zhang the same question. What is for you the next step and the missing bridge to build?
Thank you. I think the missing bridge is always topic in terms of this open science. That's my personal thinking, because for example, for the COVID-19 pandemic, when it happened in China at the beginning of this year, the data is new. The thing is new. So in our academy, we are trying our best to establish databases to share our data, but that's a problem between the scientific community and the common people, as well as the different levels of governments in China. The information is not transforming so fluently. So that takes time and that takes costs for the data. for the scientists, for the output of the research to be covered at different levels. So even till now, the output of this research is still gathering more in different disciplinaries. But for policymakers, when they are making policies about this big pandemic, which is a big challenge or a big issue in the whole society, I think they will consider more. So in the other perspective is it means that to bridge the research and the implement, I think is always a topic in many fields. So in this regard, I think our role. I'm not from the research community, and I think I'm serving as a bridger, trying to combine the policymakers in different levels, the central government, local governments, and the research communities. I think the people is the most important factor in bridging this, not only the research outcomes, not papers, not only the mechanisms. So that's why we want to, we try to make the open science initiative in the academy and in the scientific research community in China a more popular one. Recently, we have published a series of papers about the open science from the perspective of UNESCO and other global partners to make this initiative more popular in China. And secondly, we are trying to encourage our researchers to get more involved in this open science initiative. I think with these two fundamental implementations that we are doing, maybe in China for years later, the situation will become more clearer. I cannot make conclusions now, but I think what we're doing will make something to change in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. I like to have a second round with a question which is about funding. In the previous session, speakers made a point that policy is key, but funding and support to international collaboration is also equally necessary. And I think, Professor Zhang, in your presentation, you raised in your last slide how we can go ahead. We can go with seed funding, which enables a low level of collaboration, some starting activities and training and outreach, but we can go higher in the scale up to high collaboration and mega science or mega projects. And to complement these, I'd like to bring a point which we discussed in the previous session. CEO Rosie Hicks from ARDC plead for a practical approach to open science with concrete scientific collaborations or scientific domains to support with actions and funding to bring together different institutes in the world, like in the examples that were given before for COVID. So my question is, from your perspective of funding agency, would you be ready to support and go to a higher level of funding to enable collaboration in critical areas like COVID, but others as well? And have pilots, have concrete implementation activities that bring this potential into a structural thing that we do together. So any thought about this? I will start again with Manish, then Costas, and Professor Zhang.
Sure. So, sorry. So from a funding perspective, right, I think what NSF does is that it really looks at this from a bottom-up perspective. So how do we make sure that the funding provided across the different research projects, both small projects, large infrastructure projects, large facilities, that instruments and things like that, how a team project, how do we make sure that the principles of open science and the others I mentioned about sharing, about interoperability, about basic openness is really built into that. And the way we do this is by having the requirements of a data sharing policy or data management policy, about requiring output from them then go into NSF PAR or other places, making, when we fund infrastructure, making sure that there is interoperability between the different components, the ability to federate, the ability to share is built in, right? So we have, while at a higher level, right, we have this policy that we have articulated on open science, the way we implement it is really making sure that at the grassroots level, we are embedding the mechanisms necessary and providing incentive necessary to make sure we move the community towards this direction. Again, recognizing that doing this benefits science globally and has a very broad impact, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. Costas?
Yeah, to a significant extent, it is the same for us. We do have, and we had more of this in the past, areas where top-down international cooperation was mandated. So specific areas or actions for international, that the money was only for international. But we are moving, and this still exists. But we have been moving the last few years. There was an approach that's far more bottom-up, and I think very effective. So, for example, and this is not only for EOSC that I'm talking about or cyber infrastructure, but everywhere. So, for instance, we have a part of our program that's devoted to oceans and water, right? Clean oceans, sustainable, and so on. We have long-standing cooperation in that program with many countries, and we are a collaboration program. Most of EU programs are by definition collaborative, so not individual PIs, but a collaboration. So it's easy for us to include international partners in the programs. Now, this in this area of oceans, and it's the same for cancer. It's the same, it's the same everywhere. There is a big issue about data interoperability globally. And of course, I chose oceans as an example because it is eminently global and international. You cannot conceive of one country doing something about the ocean close to it without cooperating with other countries. So yes, so this is what we do. So we will engage in a major activity in the next few years, and we have been engaged already in the past about ocean-related data. And this will be by definition international, not because we decided it will be international, but because it has to be international. And we have the policies that sustain this momentum. So what I talked about earlier, so will be open, fair data, and so on. So everybody can come in without having concerns that, is this in my benefit, am I standing to lose out, or and so on. So I think this will be our main approach. Although, again, we can have on a case-by-case basis top-down actions that are aimed at facilitating international collaboration.
Thank you. Professor Zhang?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In the Chinese Academy of Sciences, actually, we are having a mixed mechanism both top-down and bottom-up in the recent years, especially for the international cooperation programs. One reason is that China is a little bit different with our international other international countries because of our strong central governmental system. And another reason is for the development of science, we need curiosity-driven things like that. So the top-down and the bottom-up are both working in the academy as well as some other scientific communities in China. That's the feature of our international cooperation programs. And our programs, the academy's programs, I think is covering around the world. We have established a formal cooperational partnership with over, I think, 90 institutions for more than 70 countries around the world at three levels: the academy level, at the institutes level, and the individuals level. So both three levels are working. Of course, it depends on different topics or disciplines or specific or even critical subjects. I think for the near future, our focus will be still focusing on some major global issues, for example, the climate change, so on, as well as ocean, earth science, astronomy, things like that. All of them are data intensive. So that's why GOSC is so important, not only for us, I think for the whole scientific community in the world. So, of course, we are actually in China every 5 years. We're having a review on many things because this year, from next year on, we will have our 14th 5-year plan. So now this year, we had the review of the 13th 5-year plan, of course, in terms of science and technology and the academy, of course. So I cannot say too long in the near future, but in the next 5 years, science and technology and the innovation in China will be more emphasized, which means I think more resources and fundings will be flow to the science and technology community in the next 5 years. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to wrap up this panel and in the meanwhile ask my colleagues from session 1, 2, and 3 to be ready to present their summary slides so that we can reach the final part of the workshop. As this preparation work goes on, I'd like to perhaps summarize the main themes in this panel. There is a general support to the principles and needs of a global effort around open science cloud, or open science commons. Everyone recognizes the importance, and major funding and initiatives are already happening in the regions represented in the panel to support opening of data, fairness of data, sharing of resources necessary to extract knowledge from this data. There is still a need to evolve with existing policies. So policies remain key and fundamental as enabler of international collaboration. There are opportunities for targeted actions in a top-down manner or bottom-up manner. I think there was general support to the idea with a need to identify what are the areas of impact, global impact, like climate, health was mentioned, environmental science, astronomy, and potentially others. Thank you to our panelists. It will be our plan to also summarize the main findings of this workshop in a public manner. This will be explained in the concluding remarks of the workshop, and I'd like to give the word to the first convener of the session, which is Simon Hodson from CoData. Please switch off your videos, and Simon, I think you're ready to present.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think Yin is sharing very kindly the first slide there. So thanks very much for this opportunity to report back on the session we held yesterday. This workshop was designed programmatically. So there was a session yesterday setting the landscape and looking at developments of open science and introducing the GOSC initiative. That was followed by a session on research programs or initiatives which could be supported, which are currently supported by e-infrastructure and could be further supported by GOSC. And then this morning there was a session on collaboration between e-infrastructures, and then this concluding session on policy and funding and sustainability. So I hope you can see the programmatic nature of this. So what I'd like to do very briefly then is to introduce the key points from speakers, and then some of the points from the discussions. Before I do that, I want to emphasize, above all, that our key objective in this workshop as a whole, and also in the introductory session yesterday, was to present the GOSC project. It hasn't started yet, but it's been conceived and is being designed, so that our collaborators, our colleagues in the global community were aware of it and were ready for invitations to participate. And the key thing is that the GOSC project provides an opportunity for international collaboration and alignment, and these discussions, a venue that will help us have these discussions, which we've discussed in these sessions. It will do that obviously in partnership and collaboration, and so organizations like CoData, my own organization, like Research Data Alliance, like the other venues and the co-hosts of this workshop, EGI, etc., will help us provide that venue for conversations, which I think are necessary, and we've heard in this session, so strategically important. Yesterday, we set the landscape. We had an intervention from Anna Persic from UNESCO, who described the UNESCO recommendation and indicated how important that was in developing consensus globally and developing engagement from UNESCO member states. Geoffrey Bolton from the International Science Council described how that fitted in, the theme of open science fitted in with the International Science Council's action plan, and emphasized the importance of not neglecting the Global South in our considerations of these collaborations. I presented the CoData Decadal program, Making Data Work for Cross-Domain Grand Challenges, and the work on interoperability and FAIR, which is at the core of that, and which we would argue needs to be at the core of our thinking about GOSC and collaboration between research infrastructures. Li Jianhui then presented the GOSC project as a major opportunity for international cooperation and alignment. We heard from Hussein Sharif about potential developments in Africa in relation to the GOSC. Sarah Jones from GEON and the Executive Committee of the European Open Science Cloud presented the approach which is being taken in the European Open Science Cloud, some of the detail on activities and discussions about how to develop and implement the European Open Science Cloud, which can provide a guide and a structure for the sort of discussions we need to have within GOSC. And Sarah also underlines the importance of RDA, the Research Data Alliance, as a platform and community that can also provide a forum for these discussions. And then Karina Pascu presented the Research Data Alliance interest group on the Global Open Research Commons as another forum for discussion, which has been thinking about some of the issues we need to address in these discussions and that can collaborate with and input to the GOSC project. Next slide, please. quickly, the take-homes from the discussions. Again, to underline clearly, the GOSC project and a broader collaboration around that is a major opportunity for cooperation and alignment, and actively invites collaboration from a large number of stakeholders and organizations globally. We've heard how important it is in these discussions to make sure we include the Global South and initiatives in Africa, for example, the African Open Science Platform, which is just appointing its first executive director, in Latin America, where there's initiatives such as La Referencia, with which we will need to engage. And then we had a discussion on, I suppose, the tension between the top-down and the bottom-up, the one-size-all versus the bespoke approaches, which are always at the heart of the development, the discussion, and the implementation of e-infrastructures. On the one hand, it is essential to include researchers in the development of infrastructures such that their needs are met. Co-creation is essential. Nevertheless, there can be a risk, if that approach is taken, of developing more silos which don't interoperate.
Simon, I have to ask you to speed up because I'm conscious about time, so we have just a few minutes.
Just 2 points. The solution to that, which was stressed in the discussions, is the use of standards, and standards allow the balance between the approaches listed in 4 to be established. But it must also be stressed that the development and the maintenance of standards is in itself a major challenge. They must be genuinely global, just as these infrastructures must be global. And it's important to have that global input because we should be very aware that there are too many instances in which standards, terminologies, etc., impose precisely that northern view of the object of study and represent power relations, whether that's in the definition of social categories, in the definition of soil types, in the definition of phonetics, just to cite 3 well-known examples. Next slide, please. I'll do this very quickly. This is just a reminder of the priority tasks for GOSC. This list came out of some of our discussions of the CoData workshops in 2019. We've presented this as a draft for feedback, and it's a working draft, and we're very keen for participants of this workshops to respond to that list of topics and to help us in this process of prioritization. Thank you very much, Tiziana.
Thank you, Simon. Tian Hui, that's your turn.
Yeah. So, could you please share my slide in? Hello? In? Okay, thank you. Great. So, on this session, actually, we invite several speakers from the science community. They will share their experience on the global science cooperation, and they will identify the challenges and express their vision about the GOSC. And actually, the 7 talks actually from 4 domain, and 3 from physics, the high energy physics and the space physics, and 2 from earth science, and 1 from astronomy, and 1 from disaster mitigation. And I think they all deliver very good presentation, and they identify some challenges. For example, so they one is the massive data management challenges. So, for example, the semantic data protocol standard, and so on and so on. And they also mention some technical and infrastructure challenges, especially infrastructure efficiency for them, and the security, and even how to make it remote control their facilities, their research facilities, and even the interoperability issues. And also they manage challenges. For example, the classic challenge of commons. So commons should be, commons and specific, which one will more valuable for them. And they also, most of them think, oh, GOSC is a good idea. They really need it. So they have some suggestions. So firstly, maybe the research culture should shift. So the open and share will be accepted by all the science community. And they also suggest if we want to establish the GOSC, so we need to in line with the current research practice. So the application-driven or research case-driven will be a good model. And they also suggest so we should care about the cost framework, so make the service can be sustainable for them. And they also introduced so the international, regional collaboration, and they need the community support. That's all. And in one word, I think this is a very good input from all the different disciplines. And this is the GOSC, actually will serve for this all these science global science corporations. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Tiziana.
Thank you. So we are getting ready for the third summary, and then we will wrap up in 3 minutes. If other people are coming in the Zoom meeting, we are just completing the previous workshop, and we will be ready to give you the floor for demos in just a few minutes. Thank you for your patience.
So I'll proceed to Tiziana?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we just completed session 3, which is perspectives from global e-infrastructure, cyber infrastructure, as you wish. A few summary contexts, resources available to the GOSC. I think several of the presenters indicated that they have infrastructure that they could potentially make available to a global open science commons or cloud. EGI noted some of the special relationships with its own federation partners and that some discussions are needed. Several important lessons learned. There are challenges in any federated model, namely balancing local innovation with national consistency, or in this case, global consistency. CSTCloud provided a practical focus on test beds, quite useful. Open Air was concerned about or felt the concern in moving from bilateral to regional to global perspectives, and also reminding us that researchers, despite Simon's comment earlier, they're not the only stakeholders. And so, yes, the researchers need to be happy with the results, but they also have to be part of a larger group. There are challenges in supporting scientific communities as opposed to international scientific collaboration. So this is one of those situations where bottom up might not work. And there's a need for interoperation. And I say that interoperation, not interoperability, which is more theoretical. So we actually have to make the things work together. Jean presented a nice point of view where mutual recognition can enable things to happen, not necessarily requiring an organization. Several key priorities came out of the discussion: connectivity, policy, security, test beds, in particular for interoperability or interoperation, and the interworking of policies, providing community-level governance, creating shared access and access policies, coordinating service, and achieving truly interoperable trust and identity frameworks. And a very big picture that everybody seemed to support the idea that we need to find a venue for discussions where we can build trust as a community. So some opportunities, ARDC noticed that they are one of the voices from the Global South, and I recognize some of the other people here in this session from south of the equator, and bless you for being here and sticking it out. Supporting collaboration, building global federation and alignment. CSTCloud, again, sustainability, transparency, agility, resource-driven. Open Air, building synergies regionally and then moving to a global community. And EGI, creating lightweight international governance, organized support networks for users wherever they may be, and open resource access policies. So a bit of a laundry list, and I'm sure we'll work across all the sessions to create a harmonized, coherent view. And with that, I hand it back to Tiziana.
So if everyone can just switch on your video for a few minutes, I think we needed to discuss the next steps. We collected the feedback from the audience, from all of you during these 2 days on priorities, which are being shown here. We don't have the time to discuss these themes, but they were recurring already. Our plan with the support of CODATA is to create a summary report of this workshop, capturing the outcomes of the sessions and the priorities that were highlighted by the audience, to go to the next step in this project, as Simon explained. The idea is to create a community of doers that want to support this initiative in a bottom-up manner. I understand there will be a call of action and participation where this workshop summary will be also available. Simon, so the next step will be really to get the support from CODATA, from RDA in pushing this initiative, and having people participating and contributing in their different roles. Simon, anything else, or Xian Hui as the co-organizers of the workshop before we conclude the session?
No, I think that's a nice summary, and we'll certainly explore how we can use the GOSC project as that locus for this initiative.
Okay, I think it's a very successful workshop. It's just a start, and our project will start next year. And we wish we can try to. We are willing to be to build a platform to communication, global communication, and then we can try to move step by step to GOSC. Okay, thank you very much.
So thank you. And in announcing the plan to have another workshop next year on this theme, I'd like to thank again everyone, and apologies to the follow-on session. Thanks, and keep in touch.
Thank you, Tiziana. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tina.
Bye-bye. Thank you.